Hello everyone, it's Frances Widdowson here. I'm just going to do a brief introduction about the Spectrum Street Epistemology session here at the University of Calgary. With me, who you can't see right now, is Kathy Drake, who is a student at Mount Royal University. And Kathy became somewhat famous last week by going to one of her classes with an orange shirt on which said, "Where are the bodies?" which we still haven't heard the last of what might possibly happen with respect to that. Anyway, what I wanted to do is I just wanted to let you know we're in front of the Speaker's Corners Rock at the University of Calgary. What happens is that the rock is painted with different messages on it. And because today is September 30th, which is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, the rock is painted with that motif. And it says on the rock, "Every child matters," and it has September 30th on it. And it has some hands on the other rock, which symbolize, I assume, the children who are assumed to have gone missing with respect to this particular residential schools issue. Anyway, for people who are unaware of Spectrum Street Epistemology, we're going to be moving over to the mats shortly, but we just put them in the sun because, to be honest, it's a little chilly here today, so there's a bit of a wind that is building up. So poor Kathy is in a skirt, so she's going to freeze to death, and I don't want to have these mats in the shade. But what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the claim: you cannot have truth, you cannot have reconciliation without truth. So you must have truth before you have reconciliation. That's the claim that we're going to start off with, and then we're going to see where it goes from there. There are, of course, a number of offshoot claims, and what street epistemology is trying to do is it is trying to get people to state these claims, and that is the most important part, because now we are dealing with a serious free speech crisis, academic freedom crisis in universities, and people feel reluctant to actually say what they believe is true. Once they stand on a mat, whether it's strongly agree, strongly disagree, neutral, if you don't understand what the claim is, it's best just to go to neutral, try to figure it out a little bit more. You ask the person, why are they standing on the strongly agree or the strongly disagree or the neutral mat, and they will make a statement, and then you ask them, why is it that, how do they come to this claim? So what evidence or what arguments or what were the kinds of things that led them to strongly agree or strongly disagree? And then you have two possibilities. One is to ask them questions, clarifying questions, or if you get bogged down, you can start another claim. So for example, with truth and reconciliation, I'm sure what we're going to get into a little bit is what is truth, what is reconciliation, those questions. Anyway, so what we're going to do now is we're going to move over to these mats, and then we're going to set up the camera, and I will start doing this with Kathy, and then there's not very many people on campus today because it's a holiday, but there might be someone who comes by, and they can join in, or it can just be Kathy and me doing this exercise for everyone. Okay, so Kathy, I think it's probably best if you come on this side.
Okay.
And then you're looking at the maps here.
Although they're backwards for the camera this way.
Are they?
Yeah, because the words are backwards.
Well, fix it so you think it's going to be the best.
Okay.
Whatever you think is best.
I think this side's better because then the sun isn't washing it out either. Yeah.
Is that good?
Yep. So we have strongly agree. Can you point to strongly agree?
Strongly agree is here.
Yes. Okay. So
And
people can see.
Strongly disagree is here.
Okay.
And neutral is here.
Okay.
Okay. So, Kathy, maybe you could say hello to the camera.
Hello.
Okay, so we start off on neutral. This is how this works. So what I do is I say, go to neutral, and then everyone goes to neutral, and then we do the claim. That's whatever that claim is going to be. So, Kathy, do you just want to stand on neutral? And then we're going to be, I'm going to be here, right? So we're a little bit backwards, but this is good.
Do you want to double check the camera?
Okay, I can check the camera here. I'm just going to check the camera. You can't really see it, but whatever. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Okay, so Kathy right now is on neutral. And so what we want to do is we want to put forward a claim. So the first claim that we have that we're going to be looking at is we must have truth before we can have reconciliation. Move.
Do you want me to move honestly, or do you want me to move for fun in a different direction?
I want you to move honestly. Okay, so for people who can't see this, I'm just going to look and see if we can make sure. I'm going to adjust the camera. I'm just going to adjust the camera here. I'm just going to move this back a little bit because we want to have the entire thing.
Should we put the speaker closer to the camera?
Yeah, maybe we should. Good idea.
Okay.
Okay, so you can't see the mats, unfortunately, but Kathy is standing in front of strongly agree. Oh, good idea. Okay, so Kathy, why are you standing on the strongly agree mat?
Because I think that truth is very, very important for us to understand what we're reconciling about.
So truth is very important to understand what we're reconciling about. So perhaps at this stage, it would be good to have a few clarifying questions. So, what do you mean by reconciling?
Well, if there's grievances, it would be trying to come to some sort of point where there's no animosity, there's no severe divisions, where people can unite together and even enjoy spending time together. There's not this sort of tension, I would suppose. It would be like the healing of tensions of some sort.
So the more tension is reduced, the more we have reconciliation.
Yeah, I'd say so. Like, even if you're just on an individual basis, it's like if you reconcile with someone, you don't feel animosity towards each other in any way, right?
So if we have a great deal of animosity towards one another, that means that we are lacking in reconciliation.
Right, or just one party could have animosity as well. Like, it could be one person doesn't have any animosity, or one side of the party and the other side does. If there's animosity or distrust or any of these sort of negative aspects that aren't allowing cohesion, then you don't have reconciliation.
Okay, and second question, because there were two major terms in this claim about we cannot have reconciliation without truth, or we must first have truth before we have reconciliation. What do you mean by truth?
We need to have evidence-based, substantiated facts. What we determine to be facts, based on, tangible, measurable evidence.
Okay, so you would argue then that the truth, okay, so the truth is based on facts.
Correct, but those, everything is falsifiable with more evidence down the road. There's the potential that you could think that something is a fact, and then later on, as more evidence comes to light, turns out you were wrong. So being able to say, okay, we're trying to move towards the truth.
Okay, so we're trying to move towards the truth, and the more facts we have to support what we're saying, the closer to truth that we are.
Right. So, like, right now, people are saying on one side that the truth is that there are 215 potential burials and that the evidence for that is ground-penetrating radar. All the ground-penetrating radar leads us to is that the truth is that there's anomalies. But that doesn't mean that we know what those anomalies are, so you need further investigation. You can't say that now there's a fact that there's burials there. There's a fact that there are anomalies that have been detected.
Okay, so the truth with respect to the 215 hits on the GPR, some would say that it means that there's the remains of 215 children.
Right.
But others would say that just because you have hits on the GPR, that doesn't mean that there's remains. There could be other things that are there. And so, do you think it's important for people to... So would you say that the 250th claim... So maybe we'll just start over. So go to neutral. We'll do a little bit of experiment here. So the claim then would be the remains of 215 children have been found at the Kamloops Indian Residential School. Okay, so I'm just going to let you might want to just pick up the mat when you're on the mat.
I'll go to slightly distant.
Okay, so Kathy is on the, and I've got them mixed up here. This is a mirror of mine. Hello? Yeah.
I'll just go to disagree.
Yeah, so slightly disagree is less disagreeable than disagree. So Kathy is on the disagree mat with respect to that claim. So why are you on the disagree mat and not the slightly disagree or the strongly disagree mat?
Because...
That's great. I'm not sure how much that's scary.
Right. I would say that I am on the disagree as opposed to the strongly disagree is because there are people who are claiming that a crime has been committed. I do believe that everyone is innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. However, because there are people making this claim, I'm going to give them a little bit of, what's the word? Like, if someone claims that someone's been murdered, or if someone makes a rape claim...
I don't know if we're hearing you very much.
Can you guys hear me now? Okay, there we go. If someone makes a claim of a crime, I think there should be an initial response of taking it seriously and then investigating. But it doesn't mean that everyone who makes a claim, that their claim is correct. People make false claims.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, you're saying that the reason why you're on disagree and not strongly disagree is because the matter hasn't been investigated yet.
Right, yeah, correct. There's been no investigation.
And so the investigation, it's the investigation that will determine where we can kind of, to some extent, arrange ourselves again on these mats. So in terms of movement, so you're on disagree. So Kathy's on disagree about that claim right now. The question is, what evidence would you require to move to either slightly disagree or strongly disagree? So let's say with the strongly disagree. What would it take for you to move to strongly disagree?
If I saw a map school grounds, and they showed septic tiles where the ground penetrating radar was, and it overlaid exactly with the ground penetrating radar where the hits were. That would be enough evidence for me, even without digging, to move to the strongly disagree.
So just for people, so we're talking about in the 1920s, septic tiles were laid on this site, but we don't quite know yet whether those septic tiles, sort of the map of that corresponds exactly with the hits.
Right.
And so what we need to do is we need to have an investigation so that it can be determined if that's the case.
Right. Well, and also, furthermore, I would also like to see actual excavations. And then some people are saying, well, the bodies could just dissolve over time in acidic soil and that sort of thing. So soil samples, like get all hands on deck. Every single type of investigation that can take place, this should be treated. If people are making claims of murder, it should be taken incredibly seriously, and there should be extensive investigations.
Okay, so if there were excavations, a few excavations, and it was found that there were no remains, there were septic tiles in this particular thing. They just did a couple. What would be your position on the claim that the remains of 215 children were found? Like if you just did a couple of excavations?
A couple excavations, if they found septic tiles, I would move to the strongly disagree.
So that would be a strongly disagree. Now, what about in the other direction? What kind of evidence would you be looking for to move towards a less disagreeable stance and a more agreeable stance?
I would like to see even one record of a family filing a missing persons report for their child.
Okay, so if that came to light, there was one child who a parent was saying, hey, we've been looking for our child never came home. We're still looking for our child.
Right, and they never found a body. There was never any conclusion to it. There was nothing like that. And they continued to hunt for the child or multiple children. Then I would start to move in this direction. There'd have to be at least one, if not, they're claiming however many. Right.
Okay, so let's start. So we had a bit of an interesting thing there about that particular claim, which is very, very important, it seems to me, to this truth and reconciliation. So, Kathy, what do you think, just to be more collaborative here, so I'm not running the show, what claim do you think we should investigate next?
What claim should we investigate next, other than the missing children, or
So the original claim was we must have truth before we can achieve reconciliation. That's the claim. I wonder if there's anyone who would argue against that. Do you think that there's anyone who would argue against that?
I could try.
Okay, so this is the other thing you do because we're a little bit limited here with this Spectrum Street epistemology today, because it is a holiday, and therefore there's not very many people around. So we've got to kind of make up our own opposition to this situation. So you're going to strongly disagree?
Sure.
So Kathy's going to strongly disagree with this, which is we must have truth before we can achieve reconciliation. That is the claim. She's strongly disagreeing. Kathy doesn't believe this herself, but she's going to try to what's called steelman the argument. So she's going to try to put the best argument forward as to what that could be. And we realize it's not ideal because it's always good to have people who really believe things to be arguing them, but in this case we gotta improvise. Okay, so why would you be on the strongly disagree mat?
Well, I think that reconciliation is really, I don't like division, and that is true. I really don't like animosity between anyone. And I think it's unnecessary. I think in order to move forward as a society, it would be great if we could all just see each other as individuals and appreciate each other. And so investigations can take time. Investigations may never happen. They may be prevented from happening for whatever reason. And so we should try and reconcile anyways. And we should reconcile, perhaps it's our responsibility as settlers, because we've caused the damage, the alleged damage, and we've stolen the land. We've come in here and everything was peaceful and happy before we came, and we decided to disregard and stop cultural practices.
Okay. I'm just going to stop you there because we don't want to get too. We want to have a kind of zero down
right
onto the claim. So you believe the best argument for saying you don't need to have truth before reconciliation, would it be fair to say, and I'm not sure if I'm characterizing your position accurately, that it's kind of a leap of faith brought about by goodwill? Like, there's really nothing, it doesn't really matter how much falsity there is, because it's just about having goodwill and just wanting to help people and so on, and truth doesn't really come into that.
Right, yeah, so if people are suffering, we can find ways to help improve people's lives now instead of waiting for the truth, then we should do everything in our power to do so.
So, for example, if someone's lying on the street bleeding and they claim that the reason why they're bleeding is because they got hit by a car, but you know that they didn't get hit by a car, they actually did something to themselves or whatever, or they got bitten by a dog or whatever it might be, they're still bleeding on the street.
Yeah, absolutely. Just help the people that need to be helped. And I honestly do believe that if someone is in a situation or a crisis or anything like that, I'm not going to say, oh, well, I disagree with you on this truth. Let's just do whatever needs to be done to get people in a better position.
Okay, so that's quite interesting, that argument, which, to be honest, I hadn't really thought that much about, and things have come up in these contexts before where people do get annoyed about quibble, and I've seen this with the Kamloops case now, is people are sort of getting annoyed that people are insisting upon that, what they consider to be a false claim, being rectified before going on in the conversation. So this seems to be a bit of a, is that it really is not about, but the claim is, though, truth and reconciliation. So those two terms have been put together. So anyway, okay, that's it's not me who made the slogan truth and reconciliation. So what's the next claim do you think we should look at?
I'm not sure, Francis.
So we have two possibilities, I think, here. One is to try to drill a little bit down onto the truth question, because some people argue that they strongly agree that truth, you must have truth before reconciliation. There's a lot of people. I would say the majority of people argue that.
Well, I think it creates more animosity if you try and push things in a certain direction, or there's a whole bunch of money being spent without the truth. So if we're spending a whole bunch of money because of lies, that ends up creating more animosity, more division. And I don't think anyone should blame any individuals because of their background on anything, right? Like, this is an issue with lawyers, the government, possibly corrupt band leaders. There's all sorts of different factors going in here. There's no reason to just blame an individual because they're a part of it.
Okay, so I got to be a bit more strict here with my microphone holding so that we can... Okay, so I think we can... I propose, and I'm not sure how you feel about this, that we do a bit on reconciliation.
Sure.
So reconciliation, Kathy, is defined as having less animosity towards people.
Yeah.
So the less animosity there is, the more there is reconciliation.
Correct.
Okay, so what we want to do then is we want to drill down a little bit on these reconciliation claims. We could also do the truth, but the truth is a bit more esoteric, and that's going to, maybe not as interesting. Okay, so today is the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. So, a National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, having it as a holiday, is a way to bring about reconciliation. What's your position on this?
Disagree.
So, Kathy, for people who don't see the mats, and I'm just wondering, I'm just going to take a look at the camera here. And I'm just going to move this camera a little bit this way, because I think that might be better so that you don't have it so far away. I hope that's better for people. We're trying to experiment with the camera.
Without a cameraman.
We don't have a cameraman because we're doing it on the cheap here. Anyway, so which mat are you on, Kathy?
Disagree.
So Kathy is on the disagree mat with respect to the national holiday. So the idea is the national holiday is a way to bring about reconciliation. You're not really strongly opposed, but you are opposed to that idea. Why are you standing on the disagree mat?
I feel as though turning it into a holiday before the truth, before we've actually determined what the truth is, with some very incredibly horrible claims against residential schools and the people who work there. I think it's creating more animosity. I think it's doing the opposite of reconciliation. I think it's creating an Orwellian environment, and I don't think it is doing anything positive for Indigenous people. I think it's just virtue signaling.
So let me see if I've got your argument correct on this. That this National Day of Truth and Reconciliation is not about truth and reconciliation, because we're not really trying to find out the truth. That's one point you've made. And the second point seems to be it's kind of symbolic and not really addressing what would actually bring about reconciliation.
Right. Well, I've been thinking about these days where everyone's wearing an orange shirt, or everybody needs to wear this color on that. It's kind of like Remembrance Day with the poppy, which I participate in Remembrance Day. But in that case, we're not trying to accomplish something.
Okay, and you believe we're trying to accomplish something here?
Yeah, it almost feels like a Orwellian Ministry of Truth, where it's telling us what we're allowed, what prescribed beliefs we're allowed to have.
Okay. So in terms of where you're standing, what would it take for you to move from the disagree to the slightly disagree?
I'm not sure, honestly.
So let's say you took a survey before the day and then after the day, and it showed that the majority of Indigenous people surveyed felt better about their place within Canada?
I still don't think that would make me move to slightly disagree, because it wouldn't do any good if the majority of the other people in Canada felt worse.
Okay. What happens if the other people in Canada felt better too?
I prefer facts over feelings.
Okay, so you would need to have some kind of factual thing that would lead you to move one way. And I'm just trying to think what that could be. If this National Day resulted in more fact-based arguments being made.
Possibly, or like actual tangible, like let's say this day, on this day, the government actually built, more centers for addiction, let's say, or more centers for single mothers, or, and it was reconciliation. It wasn't just about favoring one group of people over another. It would be like addiction for anyone, regardless of your background, not any sort of special privileges for anyone. Single mothers, more support for them so they can stay together with their children as opposed to being separated by child services, or anything like that, more education for them, or like those sorts of tangible things. I would think that would be actually create action as opposed to just fuzzy feelings that will wear away very short time.
Okay. And what about other claims about reconciliation? Like, is there another claim you think we should investigate about reconciliation?
Well, I mean, there's the claim, it's always bothered me, the claim that there's been experiments, nutritional experiments on children.
Okay, so that's going to be the next, so go to neutral. The claim is...
How's the camera?
Oh, good. There we go. So the claim is nutritional experiments were undertaken on children at the residential schools. Is that the claim? So where would you be on that?
I'll go to here.
So Kathy is having to slightly agree. And so why are you on the slightly agree, Matt?
Because I know in that time in history that it didn't matter what background you came from. If you were in an institution, they would experiment on you. There's Dr. David Cameron, who did mind control experiments on people, white women who were hysterical or whatever. They put them in induced comas and all sorts of stuff. So it was a very bizarre time. But my understanding is that the children were malnourished from their own families on their own reservations, and then they were leaving one control group malnourished, and then having the other group was given some supplements, that sort of thing. But I have never seen any pictures of malnourished children, and I've never seen any documents supporting the claim that there's been any studies. So I am that's why it's only slightly agrees, because I am still skeptical.
So you slightly agree that there were nutritional experiments undertaken on children. What would it take for you to move to a more strongly agree position?
I would need to see the archived documents, the scientists who did the nutritional experiments as they took place. I want to see their data. I want to see the actual documents.
And to move to the more disagreeable position?
I would need to hear more people's, I'd want to hear people's claims from who actually worked in residential schools. We only hear the one side of the story. I'd like to actually hear some nuns or priests or people that actually worked in schools and hear what they have to say on the matter.
Okay. Okay, and if you heard, I guess it would be depending on what they said.
It would be depending on what they said, but then I'd also take it with a grain of salt because I don't take witnesses' testimony as absolute truth.
Okay, so I think we can have another claim then that we can look at. So you go to neutral, and I think we can explore the truth a little bit here. So truth, we can move closer to the truth by listening to the stories of survivors. Move. Okay, so Kathy's on the slightly disagree, Matt, about this. Why are you on the slightly disagree, Matt?
Well, for one, if you are financially incentivized, so the more horrific your story is, the more of a payout you get, that seems to be a compromised situation where someone might be dishonest. I also know that there's been situations in history like the Satanic Panic where people they're not lying, but they come up with false memories in hysteria and psychosis and all sorts of things can kind of get out of hand, and people can be accused of horrible things that they've never done.
Okay, now we're gonna, because we don't have anyone, because I know this is a very, very, this is a strongly held belief by some people, like you do hear this claim, believe survivors. And in fact, if you don't believe survivors, you are, you're seen as being, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Like you're morally deficient. So if you just want to put that mat down, what I want you to do is I want you to go to the strongly agree mat.
Okay. The camera?
And I'm going to check this camera here. Okay, so Kathy is now on the strongly agree mat, and the claim is that survivors should be believed, or we should believe survivors. So what do you think is the best argument for the claim of survivors should be believed?
If you've survived something horrific, not being believed could be re-traumatizing.
Okay. So, and what would it take for you to move? Like, what evidence do you think that people, if someone did have that claim, so the claim is that's a very, very upsetting thing if you really, really believe something and people don't believe you. It can have other effects on your personality and so on. What do you think could be said to someone who holds that belief that would make them move to the agree as opposed to the strongly agree?
Well, I would say, I've experienced my own trauma, like full disclosure, and I don't think that anyone's obligated to believe me. If I experience something, it's only within myself that matters, right? I don't need to go and ensure that everybody else has that belief about me and what I experienced enforced. That would be ridiculous.
Okay, so I think if I understand you correctly, it is that you should have more confidence. People should try to develop more confidence in their own inner kinds of beliefs about it. Like if you have to rely on other people to tell you that your belief is true, then maybe your belief is not so solid anyway.
Right, or you should at least not impose on other people that they have to believe anything they didn't witness themselves.
Okay, so we'll start a new claim. Oops. You're on neutral. Kathy, if you just go on neutral. So the claim is believing survivors brings about reconciliation. so Kathy is slightly disagreeing with this claim, believing survivors brings about reconciliation. And remember, the definition that Kathy's had for reconciliation is lessening of animosity. So that could be, we could turn that around and say that believing survivors sometimes increases animosity, perhaps. But anyway, so slightly disagree. So, Kathy, why do you slightly disagree with the claim believing survivors brings about reconciliation?
Because I don't think that people forgive if something is true. I don't think that people forgive anyone based on people believing them.
Sorry, can you just repeat that?
So if something bad happens to someone and someone believes you that that bad thing happened to you, that doesn't help me forgive the person who did something bad to me. That doesn't help me go through that process, right? So someone believing me, if someone believes me or someone doesn't believe me, that has nothing to do with me going through the process of forgiveness or going through reconciliation.
So,
like two separate things.
Okay, so we can have survivors being believed. We could have everyone believing all the survivors, and it still might not reduce animosity.
Right.
Okay, so that's an interesting question as to whether are they related, like in any way, the two things, reconciliation and believing survivors. Okay, so reconciliation, maybe a couple more claims about reconciliation.
Would you want me to try doing the other side of that?
Oh yeah, okay, so let's do that. Okay, so the claim is believing survivors brings about reconciliation. You are slightly agreeing with that. And why would you slightly agree with that?
Perhaps if people feel believed, they'll feel supported, and if people believe them, perhaps they will feel called to some sort of action, like providing counseling services. Maybe they'll donate to counseling services to provide free counseling for people, or so on and so forth.
Okay, and in this claim, if you're slightly agreeing, do you think it matters whether the survivor's belief is true?
If the survivor's belief is true, does it matter? Yes, it does matter.
But for slightly, to say it's bringing about, so the claim is believing survivors brings about reconciliation.
Right.
So in that claim, is it required that the belief be true for that to happen?
Interesting. You would think so, yeah. That would have to be that they are being genuine with their story and that it's not a false memory for there to be true reconciliation. Otherwise, it could create more animosity down the road. On the other side, if you are told a tall tale and you believe it, you find out it's not true, then it could create some backlash.
So I guess, and something to support perhaps is the whole Kamloops situation now. Like, oh, maybe another claim. The discovery that the claim that the remains of 215 children were found at the Kamloops residential school, the arguments against that, people contesting it, is a threat to reconciliation. Okay, so Kathy is holding up the strongly disagree. So the contestation of the claim about Kamloops is a threat to reconciliation. You strongly disagree. Why do you strongly disagree with that?
Because I don't think there's any children in the ground there. I think they just found anomalies. I think they probably found septic tiles. They've refused to do an investigation. And that seems very it's actually doing so. For me, I feel like it's actually doing the opposite of reconciliation. It's doing the opposite of people actually coming together and talking about things that did happen, abuses that did happen, or neglect that did happen, or things that could have been done better, or and actually going through the process of talking about those things, and even seeing how we can be doing better today in many different ways, not just with Indigenous people, but kids in our school system right now, and figuring out how we can move forward and accelerate as a society.
Okay. All right. We can do you think we should pursue a little bit more on the reconciliation side, or do you think we should do a little bit more on the truth side?
Truth?
Truth? The truth? So truth, I'm just trying to think what would be an interesting claim. Do you have any ideas about what would be an interesting claim to explore with respect to truth?
Well, there's the symbol of the orange shirt itself.
Okay, the orange shirt. So, and what do you think the claim should be that we're looking at with respect to the orange shirt?
Well, is the orange shirt symbol legitimate? I suppose.
So the story of the orange shirt, that is factually correct.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so Kathy totally disagrees. So what is the story of the orange shirt?
There was a child who went to school and wasn't allowed to wear an orange shirt, and they took away her orange shirt.
Yes, in broad outlines. Why is that not, or I guess you should say, why would you disagree with that, the factual accuracy of that story?
That may be factually accurate, but as far as the intention simply being to take away her individuality or her creative expression, when kids went to residential schools, sometimes they were in the same clothing that they left school in, and they could be covered in bugs, not covered, but they'd be dirty, they'd be filthy, they'd be soiled, they needed a haircut, a shower, clean clothing, and so it was just standard practice to make sure that the kids were all cleaned up.
So in terms of movement on this orange shirt story, so if you were going to be less disagreeable and more thinking that the story was factually accurate, what kind of information would you need? What kinds of arguments and evidence would you need?
I would need to basically see that the school didn't enforce uniforms and that they didn't care about hygiene and that they didn't make the kids have a shower and get cleaned up and get into clean clothes and fresh pajamas before bed and slip between clean, fresh sheets in a warm dormitory.
Yes, and there's some interesting commentary on the orange shirt, the whole story of the orange shirt. Other claims in terms of truth.
Other claims in terms
that we think that we should explore with respect to truth and reconciliation.
There's the forced sterilization.
Okay, so children were women. So women. So, and it wouldn't be to do with residential, just women, Indigenous women were forcibly sterilized. Move. Okay, so Kathy is holding up the agree map. I'm just going to check the camera. That's not too bad. So why do you agree with the claim, and now we're talking about Indigenous women, right? Indigenous women were forcibly sterilized.
Yeah, I think that, and I don't have any evidence for this myself.
Okay.
But I know that they were doing eugenics back in the day. Like in Alberta, they would forcibly sterilize mentally disabled people or mentally ill people, I believe is my understanding, until like the 60s. or something. So, yeah, just with that in mind, the fact that they would do eugenics on Europeans, I don't see why if someone came into the hospital with like their 8th child or something, that the doctors wouldn't say this is for her own good and make that decision.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, Kathy, do you want to try a little bit of this yourself with me? So I can be the,
yeah, sure.
That might be a good way to mix it up a little bit. And you can think of a few claims.
Sure, let me just check the camera here. Okay, so you're right in the center, right there, and so it's good to maybe pick it up and bring it over here.
Okay.
So this is a hard one. Do you think that priests?
It's a claim. So
it's a claim.
So
yeah.
make it claim.
The claim is that priests impregnated young girls and then would send their babies into the furnace. Strongly disagree.
I strongly disagree with this claim.
Why is that?
Because I have been following these. I've been involved in the discussions that are investigating these claims. The best one being the movie Sugarcane. So there's a documentary called Sugarcane that's out now, and there's the claim that this, and I believe it's Noy's cat, is his mother. He was going to be thrown into an incinerator, and it turned out that it was his mother that put him in a box and put him on the in the pile, which someone found him before that happened. So first of all, anyway, so that's I've investigated claims about this issue, and there has been not one shred of evidence, and it seems to be highly, what's the word when you have people are influenced by other men. So there's been people saying these things, and they're absorbing this claim. It seems a likelihood.
So it's very hard to find evidence for this sort of thing in order what kind of evidence do you see in order to change that position?
In the case of the Sugarcane documentary, a newspaper story with something else besides it was the mother who had done this to her infant. So because I have that particular case, and you have it was the mother in a newspaper article talking about it. So if it turned out that was a fraudulent article and there was some other explanation, that would, it's just hearing that case makes me very skeptical of these claims about babies being incinerated.
So next claim, I believe it was on Kevin Annette's website, hiddenfromhistory.org, where he claimed that there were experiments done on children in regards to like mind control experiments, electrodes put in their head, that sort of thing, as well as children being put in electric chairs on low voltages and being tortured in electric chairs with the other children watched. What do you feel about this claim?
I strongly disagree with this claim, and I am familiar with this one, and I'm not sure if it's Annette who is responsible for this, but it certainly was Fort Albany. It was a residential school, and that was I can't remember the indigenous man who was making this claim. It was entertainment. Well, the reason why I strongly disagree is that the story is not consistent about this, and I can't see how dignitaries visiting a residential school would be entertained by children being electrically shocked. So it seems like a implausible claim, and I don't know how one has more concrete evidence, but it just seems with all the outlandish claims being made, it's likely that it's another outlandish claim.
If you saw an electric chair in a residential school, would that change your mind?
There, one could potentially have some historical record, so, like for example, at the time, someone writing down something about it. That's possible. That would lead me to move something more than just the account. See, this is just having a person say this happened. That's not very rigorous evidence for that. You need some kind of written historical document written at the time. That would be something that would allow me to move more towards the less disagreeable state.
Do you want to regroup and move the camera and stuff into the sunlight?
How long have we been doing this now?
I'm not sure.
I think we've been doing it an hour. I think that's probably good enough.
That's good enough?
So, do you think that we should, is there a claim that we might want to end on?
That's a good question. Do you think residential schools were genocidal?
Okay, so this is a claim, and that's a good one actually, because this is a huge. So the claim is, okay, so let's do this together then.
Okay.
The claim is the residential schools were genocidal. Where do you want to move? And I would be strongly disagree. I'm just gonna.
You strongly disagree?
Yeah, I'm strongly disagree. Where are you at?
I'm gonna.
Okay, so Kathy is gonna steel man the strongly agree. Okay, so let's do this what Peter Boghossian does. So I am going to try to guess. So what he does at this point sometimes is he gets people to put their best reason on a whiteboard. But we don't have a whiteboard. So we're both going to imagine in our heads what our answer is, our best answer is for that. And I'll let you go first as to what in your head. Oh no, I'm going to try and guess what your reason is. The best reason is children were forcibly. The UN Genocide Declaration states one of the criteria of genocide is forcible transfer of a child from one group to another. Is that your reason?
Yes.
Okay. And guess my reason.
There was no intention of trying to destroy in part or in whole.
Sorry.
So your reason is that there's no intention from the Canadian government or the church or the residential school employees to destroy in part or in whole another group of people. They wanted to educate them and help them integrate into the changing society all around them with, their being literate.
Correct. So Kathy and I have both guessed each other's reasons. And I think that's a good time to end it. We've been doing it for an hour. We really appreciate everyone who has been watching. I notice there's over 100 people who are watching. And so please give us feedback on what you think about this session. It was our first attempt to do this just out of the blue. I did do one earlier in Fall River, but that was with like a room. It was much more controlled. Unfortunately, we didn't have any people stop and start to watch us, and so we weren't able to invite them in. But I think it gives me a sense again, this is hard, incredibly hard work, because you have to be constantly thinking about what someone is saying and then what is a way to increase our understanding of why they have the claim that they do. Anyway, so thank you very much, Kathy, for assisting me with this project, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frances. Appreciate it.